Calling the meeting to order of the Pinal County Community College District Governing Board today on, what is today, April 18th at 2 o'clock. So thank you all for being here. And the first item is the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Board Member Ruth Smith. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic, one nation, indivisible. All right, next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item is the call to the public, and we have the list. So for today, because we do have a number of presenters today, so I am going to read, the board is prohibited from discussing, considering, or acting on any items raised during the call to the public, and individuals are limited to a 3-minute presentation. And Ms. Hernandez will be our timekeeper for each of the presenters, and I'm just going to call your names as you are on the list. So first person here is Janelle Voice. Yes, please come to, do we have a mic? Go ahead and go to the mic. Yes, thank you.
I would like to very quickly define the term non-binary. For those of you who might not know, it's a person who neither identifies as male or female. An up-and-coming comedian, Mae Martin, recently talked about living openly as non-binary. And they said, "It's been the best year of life, genuinely. And I'm 35 years old, and this has been the best year of life. It's not like I'm that happy. I'm not like skipping around. It's truly just like the absence of agony. That's all it is. And that's a low bar. And who are we to deny anybody that? The absence of agony. And who are we to deny anybody that? I believe that CAC has an obligation to do its part to ensure that none of its students ever find themselves living in agony. And that's really all I wanted to say to the board and the people here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce. All right. If we could, I understand, but could we hold applause in any show of any emotion to keep the procedure moving ahead, but appreciate your sentiments. So next person is Sandra Brightwell, or there's a bracket. So I don't know if this is Sandra and Michelle Young and Teresa Rogers together. Yes, okay.
Hello, I'm Sandra Brightwell, and this is Michelle Young. Good afternoon, Governing Board, President Kasuga, Governing Board members, Dr. Elliott, Mary Lou, colleagues, students, and guests. On behalf of the Central Arizona College support staff, Faculty Senate, and the Managerial and Technical Staff Association employee groups, and as citizens of the community, we are standing together to represent the concerns of our constituencies. On March 21st, 2023, Governing Board member Mr. Jerry Walker made comments that our constituencies felt were deeply divisive, derogatory, and disparaging. Mr. Walker said LGBTQ people are deviant in their personalities and apart from us in their approach to civilization. The comments were perceived as harmful and degrading to the entire CAC community. The impact is not exclusive to our LGBTQ students, staff, and faculty. We understand that Mr. Walker's comments are not official statements from CAC and do not reflect the beliefs of others at the college or other board members. However, it is within the interest of both CAC and its constituencies that today we make this public statement reaffirming our support of all members of our community. As a community college, we have a great duty to respect the communities we serve. We hold a great responsibility to provide a world-class education to Pinal County and our online learners. As forward-thinking educators, we hold an obligation to lead by example and be civil to one another each and every day, regardless of our individual beliefs and background. We ask our governing board members to honor all members of the CAC community. Let it be known with no ambiguity, no uncertainty, that the constituency groups of CAC emphasize our commitment to civility, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We firmly and unshakenly believe in unity and uphold of CAC's values of accountability, communities, and trust. We proudly reaffirm our commitment to making CAC a place where everyone finds the respect, dignity, and the support they deserve, not only as human beings, but as a member of our diverse CAC community. We have pledged to ensure all students have access to college resources, to create and maintain a safe space for learners and employees, and to reject all forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism, and to value the lived experiences and perspectives of others. We affirm, regardless of race, creed, class, age, veteran status, ability, gender identity, sexual orientation, faith, and other protected statuses, or where you come from or where you were born, that you have a safe place and are valued at CAC. We are CAC, and we proudly stand united as one big community. We are CAC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle? Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, next up is Teresa? Okay, so Eliza Voice?
I am genderqueer. I have been for as long as I have been alive, long predating knowing the language to describe my experience. I am also a CAC student. As a result, I am deeply concerned about statements made at last month's board meeting. While the Safe Space program was very encouraging, knowing a member of the board of directors views me, my sister, my grandfather, my step-grandfather, and many of my friends as deviant was like being dunked in ice water. CAC presents itself as a safe space for LGBTQ students, and I am unsure if it can commit to that when one of its board members is openly bigoted. In his statements last month, Mr. Walker implied he was a Christian. When I think of Christianity, I think of my Aunt Robin, a children's librarian, devout Christian, and one of the first extended family members I came out to. During one of her visits, she told me about an idea her pastor had included in his most recent service. I do not have time to recount, nor do I remember all of the details. But the important part, the conclusion, was that we should draw wide circles of love and acceptance that include everyone. That it is impossible to make the circle too wide because everyone is a child of God and worthy of non-judgmental love and respect. Every single CAC student is in that circle, and they are entitled to the safety and acceptance found within it.
Thank you, Eliza. Julie Tejas? Julie, or Julie.
It's Chalice, by the way, the T silent, it's Greek. Hello, everyone. For those of you that are here regularly, I'm Julie, the video production specialist for the college, and I help record the governing board meetings every month. My role has always been to support the college and prioritize the work that supports students and student engagement itself. I'm speaking today not as an employee of the college, but as a citizen of Apache Junction, daughter of a veteran, and a proud member of the CAC community. I'm here not only because it's my job, but I'm here speaking because I'm annoyed and angry at the comments made by Mr. Walker in the last meeting. Not only was Mr. Walker incorrect in his assumptions on the nature of the Safe Zone program, but there was no effort made to understand, and that was more frustrating. My impression is that those comments were made to make people like me feel divisive, niche, and not forward-thinking or honest. And well, I have thick skin, and I've heard public calls for the eradication of my existence in public life, so I'm not really fazed. But why this matters to me is that our students and colleagues are. One student told me she's afraid to take an LGBTQ scholarship because she fears a lack of acceptance, and she's even considering dropping out. And the comments that were made don't reflect honest, forward-thinking, or mainstream thought. According to Gallup, 71% of Americans support gay marriage, 64% favor protecting trans people from discrimination. Young adults age 18 to 29 are 47% more likely to say society hasn't gone far enough in accepting people who are transgender. And heck, even 92% of my own colleagues supported making a public statement of support for LGBTQ folks. Now, as a fan of early jazz music, old movies, and the history of the 1900s, I know these toxic ideas have no place in this century. And to demonstrate, I'll use the remainder of my time to play an excerpt from the song from 1925, so we don't need to worry about copyright, called Masculine Women, Feminine Men. Enjoy.
Look at the clothes they wear, which is the rooster, which is the hen. It's hard to tell them apart today. Sister is busy learning to shave. Brother just loves his permanent way. It's hard to tell them apart today. Girls were girls and boys were boys when I was a child.
1925.
Thank you, Julie. All right, next on the list is Dustin Maroney.
President Kasuga and members of the CAC Governing Board, my name is Dustin Maroney. I am the Executive Director of Institutional Effectiveness at CAC. I'm coming before you today on behalf of the CAC Executive Council. On Monday, April 3rd, the Executive Council released a statement to all employees reaffirming our commitment to supporting all students, employees, and our community. This statement emphasizes our commitment to freedom of expression, the principles of civility, and our equity pledge. We would like to share copies of this message with the members of the CAC Governing Board at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dustin. Dan Dooley?
My name is Dan Dooley. I'm just a resident of Pinal County. I want to thank the board for giving us a chance to speak today. A lot of what has been said has been covered on some of the topics, so I'll just revise my comments. Any life at CAC or any college across this nation, I'm a believer in having equal access to education, life on campus, etc. One might be a safe zone. I'm okay with safe zones as long as everybody has access to it. That to me is the American way, all inclusive. Transparency is another thing. Transparency to let people know, what's going on. That way you draw more people in to your ideas or whatever the project you might be working on. Projects for all. If you're not inclusive, then you're exclusive. And that is contrary to this college here, as well as across the nation in every aspect. So if you're not including all people, then you're excluding. And we don't want that because that's contrary to diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a taxpayer, we all pay taxes. That's all inclusive, just about. Maybe not for all. But as long as resources are allocated equitably and to all, given a chance for those advantages, then I think we're in the right path. So just again, keep in mind that there's a lot of people that just want everybody included and be able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Next, we have Charlie Ray.
Y'all really set up a podium that was taller than me. Thank you. Today, I would like to talk about fear. My mother served in the Air Force for 10 years, and the entirety of her service was under the shadow of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, which threatened openly court service members with being court-martialed, imprisoned, or ultimately dishonorably discharged. She served with the fear of losing her job, the fear of losing her ability to financially support her partner and 2 beautiful children, the fear that her whole life could be ripped away just because she's a lesbian. I don't believe you truly know what that fear is. You don't know the fear of the possibility of your landlord evicting you if they don't agree with you being queer. You don't know the fear of not being safe holding your girlfriend's hand in public. You don't know the fear of hearing someone yell a slur behind you on the stairs and bracing for impact as you believe you are about to be pushed. You do not know fear, and yet you sit in that chair and you tell queer students that they are deviant, that they don't deserve to be here. You spout this outdated rhetoric that homosexuality is somehow poisoning society. And for some reason, we are less deserving of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You spew this disrespect to people who are just like you, members of our schools, our churches, our communities, people who go to work every day just to support their families, people who are, in reality, just like you, sir. I would like to finish by quoting a verse from the Bible. As a Christian, John chapter 8, verse 7 says, "And he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her." I know I am not without sin, sir, because the scripture tells us that there is no flesh without sin. Do you truly believe you are in the position to cast that stone? Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Next, we have Janelle Alwyn.
Board President Kasuga, members of the board, President Elliott, and guests. My name is Janelle Alwyn, and I am a retired faculty member from Maricopa County Community Colleges and a longtime Coolidge resident. I have 2 things I want to discuss, a compliment and a concern. I'm very pleased to see CAC's robust commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm a bit confused and seriously concerned how to reconcile that commitment with the fact that we have a sitting board member who is the very antithesis of DEI. I was a full-time residential faculty at Maricopa Colleges when Jerry Walker was serving his single term as a governing board member. I won't go into everything I wanted to say, but there was a panel convened. His behavior was so abhorrent, there was a panel convened to investigate the charges. And the panel found that some board members, including Mr. Walker, attempted to censor the student newspaper, asserted the right to control course content, meddled with personnel decisions, attempted to influence admissions and decisions in programs, engaged in proselytizing behavior with regard to religious and political views, made inappropriate and offensive comments about race, ethnicity, religion, and gender identity, and campaigned to remove references to diversity and the value of inclusiveness from the district plans. The internal investigation said, quote, "Each person interviewed described Mr. Walker's behavior as demeaning, bullying, inappropriate for the setting, and unfair to the students. Several said it was a blatant abuse of power. Others described the setting as oppressive and a ruined or diminished educational opportunity." I would not bring up this 15-year-old event, and I didn't give you all the details, but I wouldn't bring up this 15-year-old event if I saw a change in Mr. Walker. I see no change from when he was on the Maricopa board to now. He's repeating the same hateful rhetoric that he did use then. And at the last meeting, as recently as the last meeting, when Chief Roberts was making his presentation about community policing, Walker made his anti-LGBT plus comment. He disrespected Chief Roberts. He disrespected the LGBTQ plus community, and he disrespected the larger college and outlying community here. So I want to close up with two things. I have two requests. One is a suggestion, one is a request to Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker has said it is his goal in life to tell as many people about Jesus Christ as he possibly can. I would like to suggest to Mr. Walker that instead of telling people about Jesus Christ, a more effective strategy might be to model Christ-like behaviors and qualities. Those qualities are commonly accepted to be humility, charity, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, and love. I think if you modeled Christ-like characteristics, it would be far more fruitful than saying hateful things about groups that you don't know or understand.
Thank you for your statements. All right, next, Karen Hinhitty.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Hinhitty. Thank you, governing board members and community, for hearing my comments. I am enormously grateful to the founding fathers of this country for including a separation between church and state, which I believe is absolutely essential for the functioning of a democracy. At the same time, I recognize that many board members, CAC employees, students, community members, and myself are deeply committed to their faith communities. Given this, I wanted to share a prayer poem from my faith community regarding LGBTQ+ people, which are our coworkers, colleagues, students, family, friends, and ourselves. Since I teach English, I think a prayer poem is very appropriate. Blessed are the trailblazers who brought us this far, who are still trailblazing, still celebrating. Blessed are the drag queens and kings who remind us not to take life too seriously. Blessed are the gender benders, non-binary, gender fluid, third gender folk, those who challenge us to reframe our gender paradigm. Blessed are the young ones who present fearlessly from the start. Blessed are their parents who make space for freedom, who love their children fiercely. Blessed are the siblings and relatives who educate, support, and love us as we are. Blessed are the genderqueer youth who are struggling and persist. Blessed are the 90-year-olds just coming out and those who have been out for decades. Blessed are those whose lives were cut too short. May their stories live on through us. Blessed are the survivors. May they keep on living. Blessed are the allies, learning to be accomplices. Blessed are those gathered here today, witnessing, learning, celebrating. May we all commit to continue showing up, fighting for justice, and celebrating all the genders of life.
Thank you, Karen. All right, next we have Jack, is it Mathis? Is it Mathis? Oh, sorry. Can't read.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad got to meet all you folks over here and just looking out in the crowd. It's been a while since I've been on a campus, but I've been there many times. I do have a master's degree in counseling, and I also have worked for universities and medical schools, actually in different states. And I thought I'd show up here because I got wind of this meeting, and I thought it would be kind of important to share this, at least my opinion. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere other than just the fact that it's my opinion only as a professional, that I'm retired now. Let me make that very clear. And I have worked with many students, young students, elementary school, high school, older students, and all sorts of different issues and trauma, and dealing with gay and sexual trauma, the whole bit. And, just let me say, I do have a lot of life experiences. So, I mean, if you disagree with me, that's okay, because that's just the way life is. We have to go through life where sometimes our beliefs are challenged. Sometimes we've got to fight a little bit. Sometimes we need to learn how to cope and not do that with violence, and know how to communicate with people such as Jerry, I think, because it seems like everything's focused on him today. I didn't come here for that reason. I just came here because I was listening to some issues that deal with having a safe space. And, I was just in my mind thinking, because I'm a veteran, I'm a soldier. Back when I grew up and I went through the colleges, there should have been a safe place for soldiers, because they were getting beat up by a whole lot of people out there because they didn't appreciate the war in Vietnam. And maybe they don't want to go to war because a lot of their friends died, but there was no safe place for those guys. And they just got thrown out there and they learned to cope. One of the things that concerned me, I guess, just listening to some of the comments being made, and I'm not religious, let's make that very straight. I'm not a religious person, I'm not a Christian, okay? So I don't think that this is something that I'm saying because it's my religion, because it is not. It's just part of life. And I've seen people in life deal with some very trauma, a lot of emotion, which is sort of what I see a lot of times when people that have the issues of being gay or queer or lesbian or whatever gender they choose to be or focus on. But, living in a university setting, you're sort of out of the touch with what reality is out there and living with the real world. You have a nice cozy place here where everybody accepts a lot of different behaviors or different lifestyles, which is okay. I'm not opposed to any of that stuff. But when you leave the campus and you graduate, you get a degree, you get a job, part of the problem is going to be, if you have a safe space set up on the university campus here, part of the problem is going to be you don't learn to cope. Just like you don't learn maybe to cope with Jerry and his religious beliefs.
Sir, your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, I didn't know I only had 3 minutes. But I just want to say that I think the board needs to take a serious approach as to that whole concept of what is real and what is not real. You need to cope and learn what's going on, okay, in the real life. Talk more. Cut off.
All right. Our last presenter is Wesley, and I apologize, I can't read your last name. Wesley It starts with your last name starts with an M. Oh, gotcha. All right.
Wesley McJunkin.
McJunkin.
All right. Hello, my name is Wesley McJunkin, and I would like to address Mr. Walker's comments at the last board meeting. The LGBTQIA plus community are not deviants. They are hardworking, kind, loving members of society. And I know that because I am a member of that community, because I am a bisexual man. I try my best to be a good person for the area you represent, Apache Junction. I have lived in Apache Junction my whole life, the same house since I was born, actually. I was a straight-A student going through the Apache Junction Unified School District my whole life. I was in an NHS, and I was in honors and AP classes and graduated with 11th best GPA in my graduating class. I was a part of varsity choir all 4 years of high school, and I was on the JV basketball team my freshman year. I was in musicals, and I participated in the varsity golf team my junior and senior year of high school. I volunteered at the high school. I have volunteered for the AJ Public Library. I have volunteered for the AJ Food Bank. I now work at Home Depot, and I'm well welcomed and well respected by my coworkers and managers. And I'd like to think that I'm a good person and not a deviant. And everyone I know in the LGBT community are good people too. Now, in the comments of safe spaces are needed. I wish they weren't. I wish the whole world was a safe place for everyone, but with the hatred and violence towards the LGBT community, safe places are needed. There are churches and religious groups and clubs that are safe places for Christians in many institutions, but there are very few safe places for the LGBT community. I often am not attacked for my sexual identity because I am a lot of times seen as a heterosexual man. But I see people who think that and they say transphobic and homophobic comments around me. Because of these horrible comments, I know that safe places are helpful and truly necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was the last of our presenters. And before I move on, I'd like to read a section of the Arizona Revised Statutes regarding at the conclusion of an open meeting, at the conclusion of an open call to the public, individual members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the public body, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the public body, that would be us, shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. So given that, as a reminder of our guardrails here, Mr. Walker, I will go ahead and call on you since your name was brought up several times.
Several times, yes. Can everyone hear me? I hope so. I'm just going to respond to you by reading something for you that made a difference in my life when I was faced with some lifestyle choices a long time ago. And that do mean a long time ago because I've been around like 77 years now, and I'm working on some more of it. I know there are probably some people in this room now that would like me not to live any much longer, but that's their problem, not mine. I intend to stay around as long as I can, and I will say from the book of the Romans in chapter 1, starting with verse 16, you might want to take some notes. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believes, to the Jew first, but also to the Greek. The Greek means the rest of us, not just the Jews. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold truth in unrighteousness. Be sure that you're holding the truth in righteousness, not in unrighteousness. Be sure that you are doing something that God has ordained you to do, not something you've chosen to do. Because that which may be known of God manifest into them, for God hath shown it unto them, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. No one in this room has an excuse to be the way they are. We all need to be concerned about what we're doing and how we affect the public. I object to that rainbow flag over there flying equally to the state of Arizona flag. It should not be there in that capacity. That makes the sovereignty of the state of Arizona equal to a group of people who want to consider themselves the squeaky wheel. Sometimes when you have a squeaky wheel, you don't need to oil it, you just need to change the bearings. Get your bearings right. For the invisible things, go ahead.
Order in the room, please. And Mr. Walker, if you could just keep your responses to responding to the criticism.
I am. That's what this is all about. I'm responding to that criticism.
Okay.
People are not criticizing me, they're criticizing the God that created them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. Because that they, when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changing the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like a corruptible man, and like birds and four-footed beasts, etc., things that we don't see very much of anymore. Wherefore God hath given them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie. And I've heard that today several times. God's truth is not a lie, gentlemen and ladies. And worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause, God gave them up to vile affections. Even their women did change their nature, used in that which against nature. And likewise, also men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lusts one toward another, men with men and women with women, conceiving themselves that recompense of their errors which was meant. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to reprobate minds, to do those things which are inconvenient, being filled with unrighteousness and fornication and wickedness and covetousness and maliceness, for every full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, and whisperers. They're backbiters. They're haters of God. They're despiteful, proud boasters, inventors of all kinds of evil things, and disobedient to their parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implications, unmerciful, and the list goes on and on. Just read Romans chapter 1, and you'll learn something about what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Do any other board members have a comment? If it pertains to any criticism that was mentioned today. Dr. Odiorn.
The board is not able to discuss or act on anything we heard today. We can, however, request that something be put on a future meeting agenda. And I would like us to consider sometime in the very near future, like next month, an agenda item for the board to review, and it would be my hope, endorse the CAC civility statement and the CAC equity pledge, and possibly related matters as well. I looked at the board ethics policy, and it doesn't really apply directly to the kinds of things we've discussed today. I think the board needs something that does apply. So if we could have that on a future agenda, preferably next month.
Yes, actually, I had something very similar to state. So I was going to direct Dr. Elliott, and I'm hearing another board member, to bring back to the board, and preferably at that June meeting next month, the policy and value statements that support an equitable and inclusive environment for our learners, our entire college community, and the community at large. And just the notion of no room for intolerance. So Mr. Lopez or Ms. Smith, any other comments?
I would support that.
I would also.
All right, great. We've got direction. Thank you all for being here and being part of the meeting today. And to the call to the public, it's just part of our democracy to allow that to occur. So we appreciate you being here and spending your time here. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So move.
I would second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to consider the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, designation reserved for future facilities. Mr. Wadka.
Thank you, Madam Chair, governing board members, Madam President, Madam Secretary, and colleagues and guests today. Next two items are under my purview here. The first one is the designated reserve for future facilities. What we're asking for here is that the governing board designate $15 million of unrestricted net assets, meaning our cash reserves, as a restricted reserve for future facilities, for a total reserve for future facilities balance of $64,838,084 after this particular transfer. The reason we are doing this is, as you all know, we are starting a construction project at SMC campus, both an allied health building and a trade skill building. And next month, our architects will be here presenting the first GMP, guaranteed maximum price of that project. And we have to ensure that we have enough money over in the correct fund to pay for this project over the next couple of years. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any comment? Yes.
Just a
Mr.
statement, thank
Lopez.
you for the presentation. I think it's important to have enough revenue because of inflationary costs have gone way up. And
Yes.
so it's so important to have really good facilities for students. So besides the instructors, which are, the most important. But thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? I was in Apache Junction last week, and I know the mayor and council I mentioned the project. I didn't have any details yet, but they're very excited that something is happening in their backyard in Apache Junction. So look forward to the presentation next month.
Next month.
Oh, yes. And I need a motion to approve the designation reserve for future facilities in the amount of $15 million. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved in second. Mr. Lopez, Dr. Odiorn, any discussion? If hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, you got that one.
Thank you.
And you've got the next item on the agenda, which is the preliminary draft of the 2023-24 budget for publication.
Yes, ma'am. This time of the year again. Fiscal year 24 budget around the corner. What you have in your packets are 3 schedules, schedules A, B, and C. I will read so the public has this on record on what each schedule means and what are the key components of our 23-24 budget that starts on July 1st. First of all, it is a balanced budget. All funds you will see $134,772,221 as our expenditures and corresponding revenues. Schedule A, general fund, we have a 13.1% increase that you'll see compared to the current year. That is due to a 5% salary increase and an increase also in the Arizona State retirement system and health benefit costs. Also this year, or next year I should say for the budget, we are moving over the print shop and motor pool that were in a different fund. They are being moved over to the general fund, and we have increased the adjunct rate per hour from $775 to $900 per credit hour. In our unexpended plant fund, you'll see we have $38 million of reserve capital for SMC construction project. That is the current amount we have, plus what we folks just approved additional funds for that construction project. The retirement of indebtedness fund, we have a $1.3 million decrease in the secondary tax levy to utilize the balance that we have in a reserved debt account. So we are decreasing, as you'll see on Schedule A, we're decreasing the secondary tax levy since we have monies in reserve to pay for that, which will affect the pocketbooks of our taxpayers. There'll be less of a secondary tax levy. Retirement, or employee salaries, I should say, we are enacting a 5% cost of living increase for all full and part-time employees starting July 1st. And as I mentioned previously, the $775 to $900 adjunct rate is a 16% increase to make us more competitive with both Pima and Maricopa Community Colleges. Our retirement is a 5% increase in the salaries in retirement. That is based on a percentage of pay. And also, as I mentioned, there's a slight increase in the Arizona State retirement system rates. Healthcare. Healthcare is increasing 7.5% overall next year for our budget for health benefit costs. And the college is absorbing all of those costs, that entire 7.5%. 100% is being covered by the college. And in our other benefits, there's just a slight reduction in the unemployment insurance. So those are the major highlights on Schedule A. Moving on to Schedule B, our revenues and expenditures, you see tuition and fees were increasing. The budget is increased by about $2.5 million, and that's due to the increase in our tuition rate from 50 to 75 for next academic year. Our secondary tax levy, as I mentioned, we're reducing because we have mature debt reserve account balance of approximately $1.3 million that we could reduce. The STEM workforce, the state restored our Pinal County's allocation of STEM funds for next year. And in the other revenues, we have a slight decrease due to the reduced leasing of capital items. Moving on to Schedule C, that is a breakdown of the expenditures by our various categories. So in instruction, in addition to the salary and benefit impacts, we do have a 380% increase due to the expansion of the Professional Career Pathway Project Grant. It is 380% increase because it is going from $600,000 to $2.9 million in our budget next year. The public service line items is lower due to the end of the First Things First grant. Capital budget, obviously increasing due to the $38 million in capital funds that are set aside for the SMC project. Debt service, we're projecting $2.5 million in leasing debt payments. It is down from last year's budget. And the contingency fund. If all of you are aware, we are in the middle of a compensation study right now. We do not have the results of that study yet, but we are setting aside $1 million in reserve towards implementing the salary compensation study. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of these three schedules. This budget is now ready to be published. We're proposing that the board approve this preliminary draft. After approval, we publish the budget. The budget cannot be decreased or increased after that point in time.
All right. Any questions of board members for Mr. Wodka? Hearing none? Is there a motion to approve the preliminary draft 2023-24 budget for publication?
So move.
All right, Dr. Odiorn, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Smith. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, ready for publication.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to reports. So Dr. Elliott, report from college president, district update and legislative update.
Good afternoon, board members, President Kasuga, faculty, staff, guests, and students that are here with us today. A couple of updates for the district. Earlier this month, we had our Perkins Grant monitoring visit, and the visiting team was extremely complimentary of the faculty and staff and our programs and wrote the following in the report. We were extremely impressed with the simulated work environments such as the virtual reality, nursing lab, fire science, burn tower, and the partnership with Sun. And as you recall, we get substantial Perkins funding that goes towards equipment and needs in our career and technical education program. So that kudos to everyone that helped on the visit. Andrew Clegg led the visit, and many of Dr. Berry's faculty and staff were involved in that as well, and they were extremely pleased with the college. Also, the college has been awarded a fund down of the Title V grant. As you may recall, we applied for that a year ago. We were not funded, but the federal government decided to fund down, and we will be receiving $2.8 million to implement support services for students over the next 5 years. Some of the supported activities include financial literacy workshops, hiring an instructional designer to assist faculty with universal design principles, and ongoing professional development, as well as services to support student basic needs and mental health. So those are a couple highlights from the district. I'm happy to answer any questions before I move on to the legislative update.
All right, any questions for Dr. Elliott? Right,
All
go
right.
ahead.
So many of the bills that we have previously discussed are unfortunately no longer moving. They have either stopped at committee or did not pass either the House or the Senate. But there are still a few bills that are active and that I am following, including Senate Bill 1400, which allows for non-credit workforce training to be included in community college full-time equivalent enrollment. As you know, that helps with our FTSE funding very much. And this bill has actually passed the Senate. Senate Bill 1717 provides an incentive bonus to high school teachers, school districts, and charter schools for teaching dual enrollment courses. This bill has passed the Senate. As you recall, in the past, the state of Arizona incentivized students taking AP exams. And so this will really also benefit us if it passes for more schools and teachers offering dual enrollment. Senate Bill 1013 prohibits a university or community college from limiting any area on campus where free speech may be exercised by a person who is lawfully present, and this bill has passed the Senate. Senate Bill 1331 prohibits the governing board of an educational institution from adopting policies prohibiting the parent or legal guardian of a student from carrying or transporting a firearm on the property of an educational institution if the parent or legal guardian possesses a valid concealed weapons permit. This bill has passed the Senate and has been transmitted to the governor. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Hoping the session's over soon. Sorry, my comment. All right, Mr. Watka, you're up once again. Business affairs reports.
Okay, thank you once again. 3 reports today. And before we start the reports, I'd like to introduce a new direct report of mine, new Chief Human Resource Officer, Jennifer Lawson. She started yesterday,
Welcome.
and she decided to come back today.
Oh, that's a good sign.
So that's a good sign. So welcome to Jennifer. 3 reports. First one is our audit report. We have 3 representatives here. I'll introduce Nicole to come up and present the fiscal year 22 audit, both the regular audit and the single audit. Now, those of you remember Nicole was just here a few months ago presenting the 21 audit. Folks, we are finally caught up. Thank you to Louisa. Thank you to everyone here that's finance office related. Thank you to student services for the student services side of the audit. We are caught up. We are there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. The auditors are now coming in here soon, working on the 23 audit, and they promise us we will be done by Christmas, right, Nicole? So back to our regular scheduled programming and getting the audits done on time. So no pressure for us and for the auditors. So I will turn it over to Nicole to present the fiscal year 22 audit and her staff that is here today.
Welcome back, Nicole.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, President Kasuga, Dr. Elliott, faculty, staff, students, board members. As Chris said, I'm the financial audit manager. That was over your audit of the district for fiscal year 22. This is actually my 3rd presentation in less than a year. So that is a lot to have that many audits out that quickly. So thank you for inviting me to join your regular meeting today to present our audit results and findings for the Pinal County Community College District. Joining me from my office is Brian Stutzman, the financial audit senior on the audits, and Will Kletcher, who audited the Student Financial Assistance Cluster. Before we discuss the audits, I wanted to provide a little background on the Arizona Auditor General. So the office is a legislative agency made up of nonpartisan staff. Although we are accountable to all 90 legislative members, we report directly to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, which is a bipartisan group of 10 members, 5 appointed by the Senate President and 5 appointed by the Speaker of the House. We are an independent source of impartial information concerning state and local government entities and programs. We also provide specific recommendations to improve the operation programs of state and local governments, which Pinal County Community College District is a part of. We are well-versed in and follow several standards, including government auditing standards. These standards were created by the United States Comptroller General and outline several requirements for things like audit reports, professional judgment, audit evidence, professional qualifications for auditors, auditor ethics, independence, objectivity, audit evidence, and our audit quality control process. All auditors of federal, state, and local governments use these same standards to perform audits and produce reports. So our presentation today is in accordance with Laws 2021, Chapter 427, Section 3, which directs the board to require its auditors, the office, to present audit results and findings to the board in a regular board meeting within 90 days of the audit's completion. So this is a great opportunity for us, your auditors, to be in front of you, to provide information about our work, and to answer any questions that you might have of those reports. Next slide. Today we'll be discussing our work on the 3 required reports: the district's annual comprehensive financial report, the report on internal control, and the federal single audit report. As we have done in the past, we sent you an email when your annual reports were completed, and we sent each of you links to these reports in the email dated March 30th, 2023 as the reports were actually issued all together. The first report, the district's annual comprehensive financial report, presents the district's annual financial statements and our opinion as to whether the district's financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in conformity with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. It's wonderful to report that for fiscal year 22, we reported an unmodified or clean opinion, which means that the district's financial statements are reliable. And as Chris mentioned, this will be the first time the financial report is issued timely since fiscal year 2017. So a great accomplishment. The second report, the report on internal control and on compliance, which is included in the single audit report, is where we report any findings and recommendations that we have as part of that financial statement audit. Although we found that the district's financial statements are reliable, we are required to report findings on items like deficiencies in internal control, fraud or abuse, and noncompliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and agreements that we identify as part of that audit. We reported one financial statement finding, which I will discuss later. Finally, the third report, the federal single audit report, includes our assessment of the district's compliance with federal program requirements over each federal program we are required to audit, our report on internal control over compliance with federal programs, and the district's schedule of federal expenditures of awards and our opinion on it. The single audit report is also where you will see 3 findings we found during our federal compliance audit, along with the district's response, and Brian will also discuss those findings later. So because we know these reports can be very detailed and complex, we also prepare audit report highlights, which is a 2-page summary that you received along with that report. The highlights include the district's largest primary revenue sources and how the district has used those monies over the last 10 years. The highlights also provide you brief information about our key findings and recommendations and contain links to prior and current audit reports and also user guides to help you understand those reports. I would like to take the opportunity to present you some key financial information presented for the district over the last 5 years. The district's 4 main sources of revenue consist of property taxes, government grants and contracts, state assistance, and tuition and fees. As you can see from the graph, with the exception of government grants and contracts and state assistance, which have increased over the last couple of years, government grants and contracts increased due to the additional federal grant funding because of the pandemic. And it is related to the program, the Education Stabilization Fund program that you've been spending over the last 3 fiscal years. State assistance increased because the district received distributions beginning in fiscal year 2021 from the state's Smart and Safe Arizona Fund as a result of Proposition 207. And then on the expenses side, as you can see from the graph, the district's 4 primary expense purposes consist of institutional support, instruction, scholarships, and student services. Most expenses remain relatively consistent with slight increases and decreases. However, scholarships increased from the prior fiscal year by $4.9 million. This is primarily a result of increased expenses related to the increase in COVID-19 federal funding previously discussed, which one of your programs used. And then on the next slide, highlights on revenues, expenditures, and net position for the last 5 years. On this slide, the graph highlights the 5-year trend of the district's revenues exceeding its expenses. The black line above the revenues and expenses represents the district's net position or reserves, which has increased every year since fiscal year 2018. Most importantly, the district's overall net position increased by $27.8 million from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. So total net position for the district is $202.3 million at the end of June 30th, 2022. It is important to note that not all of the net position balance was spendable at the end of fiscal year 22 because $74.6 million of this balance is invested in capital assets and $9.4 million is restricted for grants, contracts, debt service, and other miscellaneous purposes. The remaining balance of $118.4 million is unrestricted. And then finally, I would like to highlight the district's federal expenditures that are presented each year in the report. The district received grant revenue from 5 federal agencies during fiscal year 22. Included in the table, you can see that two largest federal agencies that the district made federal expenditures from were the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Labor, which comprise over 99% of the federal grants received by the district. You can also see that were significant increases in federal expenditures totaling $72.2 million between fiscal years 21 and 22, primarily because of the COVID-19 federal monies that were spent. The majority of this increase was within the U.S. Department of Education federal expenditures that included an increase of $7.8 million in expenditures for the Education Stabilization Fund program to be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19 pandemic. Further, the U.S. Department of Labor expenditures are provided for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act program, with expenditures of over $596,000 this fiscal year, which is a slight decrease from the prior year. Do you have any questions on the financial results? Finally, as part of our work, we reported 4 audit findings and applicable recommendations in the district's fiscal year 22 report. As previously noted, the report on internal control and compliance is where you will find our financial audit findings along with the district's responses to them. For the district, we reported 1 financial statement finding over the district's compliance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law in this report. It's important to note that the district has improved its policies and procedures over protecting its IT systems and has corrected some deficiencies from prior years. Financial statement finding 2022-01 identified instances where the board appeared to continue violating Arizona Open Meeting Law for its executive session meetings after receiving a violation notice from the Arizona Attorney General. Specifically, the board received a violation notice dated August 25th, 2022 from the Arizona Attorney General regarding its November 16th, 2021 executive session meeting agenda, which did not include the required description of the matters to be discussed during the executive session, which are closed to the public. However, our review found that the board failed to publicly notice the matters to be discussed during its August 16th, 2022 and November 15th, 2022 executive sessions by similarly omitting the required general description of the executive session matters to be discussed. We recommended that the district develop and implement written policies and procedures to guide the preparation of all board notices and agendas, including executive sessions, and ensure they comply with Arizona Open Meeting Law. The district should also train board members and those responsible for preparing the Arizona Open Meeting Law and related Attorney General guidance to ensure that they are aware of and comply with the requirements. The district reported that it anticipates fully correcting the deficiencies by June 30th, 2023. Did you have any questions on that finding? I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian, who's going to be discussing the district's fiscal year 2020 single audit report and those 3 findings.
Good afternoon. So as Nicole mentioned, the single audit report is where you will see any deficiencies that we found during our federal compliance audit, along with the district's responses. For fiscal year 2022, we reported 1 federal finding related to the Education Stabilization Fund, Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund Program, or the HERF program, and 2 findings for the Student Financial Assistance Cluster. The first federal compliance finding identified that for the district's HERF program, the district's business office omitted on its 2021 annual report $1.2 million it spent from the program's institutional portion to discharge students' outstanding account balances. It is important to note, however, that we found in testing the district's quarterly reports that this amount was properly reported by the district in their September 30th, 2021 and December 31st, 2021 quarterly reports. Additionally, the district failed to publicly post its program quarterly reports, of which there were 8 in total, on its website within 10 days of the quarter end. Specifically, the reports were posted anywhere from 12 to 327 days after the quarter ended. Due to the number and significance of these errors within the district's completion and submission of the program reports, we have issued a qualified opinion for the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund program. In addition to preventing the U.S. Department of Education from properly monitoring that the district spent these federal monies in accordance with program requirements, these deficiencies resulted in a lack of transparency to the public for how it spent federal monies for program purposes. We recommend that the district's business office follow its existing policies to verify that all federal expenditures are properly included in the annual report, require a knowledgeable employee to review all annual reports for accuracy, and frequently update its internal grant schedule to track when each federal grant program report is required to be completed, submitted, and publicly posted. Secondly, we recommend that the office ensures that employees involved in completing federal grant program reports are made aware of the report's designated due dates, including any requirements for making them publicly available. Lastly, we recommend that the office complete and publish on the district's website the required quarterly grant reports for the COVID-19 Education Stabilization Fund no later than 10 days after the quarter's end. The district reported that it had planned to have corrected the deficiencies on March 31st of 2023. And next slide. The second federal compliance finding, which relates to the Student Financial Assistance Program, identified that for 1 of 40 students tested, the district used incorrect credit hours when calculating the refund amount it recorded in the Common Origination and Disbursement, or COD system, resulting in this student being owed a refund of $275. In addition, for 5 of 40 students tested, the district did not calculate, report, and return student financial assistance monies either owed to the student or to the federal government within 45 days after the date the financial aid department determined the student withdrew. As a result, we recommend that the district accurately calculate, report, and return student financial assistance monies to the student or the federal government as applicable within the required 45 days. Additionally, the district should require an independent review of the return of student financial assistance monies calculations prior to the submission to the COD system. While this repeat finding was first reported last year in fiscal year 2021, the district reported that it anticipates fully correcting this deficiency by June 30th, 2023. And next slide. And the third and final federal compliance finding, which also relates to the student financial assistance cluster, identified that the district did not accurately report student enrollment status changes and the effective dates of those changes to the National Student Loan Data System for 4 of 60 students we tested, participating in the federal Pell Grant or federal direct student loan programs. As a result, we recommend that the district fully implement its newly documented written policies and procedures to report accurate enrollment status and changes to the NSLDS within 60 days of a change for each student receiving Pell or direct loans. We also recommend that the district verify that student enrollment status changes recorded on its student information system and reported to the NSLDS are accurate. It is important to note, though, that the district has made some great improvements in its enrollment reporting from the prior year, as we did find less errors than the previous audit. And as a result, I'm happy to report that we were able to issue an unmodified or clean opinion for the Student Financial Assistance Cluster. Fiscal 2017 was actually the last fiscal year that this cluster received an unmodified opinion. The district reported that it does anticipate fully correcting this deficiency by June 30th, 2023. So this completes our presentation of the district's fiscal year 2022 audit reports, including the 4 reported findings. Are there any questions that Nicole or I could answer for you concerning the audits?
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for the information and making the trek down here once again. You, Nicole, in particular, and nice to meet our new your new team as well. So, Chris, are we on the mend in terms of?
Yes, we are in the mend, both on the financial side and on the federal side.
Okay.
Fingers crossed, and as the auditor stated, we've had a struggle here, as everybody knows, with our new ERP implementation 6 years ago, but we're caught up. We're headed in the right direction, and hopefully next year there will be no findings.
He's chuckling over there.
I'm chuckling, but
no,
you
he's
know.
chuckling over there. Your
Oh, he's
auditor's
chuckling. Well,
Your auditor's chuckling.
auditors should not chuckle in public.
I know. Dr. Odiorn has a question.
Chris, with regard to 2022-101, you anticipated completion by March 31st with your corrective action. Did that happen?
Yes.
And the other two, 102 and 103, you anticipated by June 30th, or are we on track for June 30th?
Correct.
Okay, and finally, with regard to the one relative to board 2022-01, and maybe this is more for Dr. Elliott. Do you have a plan for when the board will be able to look at revised policies and procedures to correct that?
Yes, we are going to do open meeting law training at the July retreat and look at all of your policies at that time.
Also, the college attorney reviewing and approving agendas. I thought that went into place last year. Is it in place?
It did, it went in place, he reviewed, but he didn't always officially approve them for posting. And so now we're asking him to not only review, but also confirm in his email that he approves them.
Great, thank you. Good questions. All right. Mr. Walker, I think you've got a few other things on the agenda.
Two more reports, our monthly budget reports and the awarded bids. So the monthly budget is summarized data through February of 2023. February 2023 shows the district's operating fund expenditures are at 56.64% of the total budget. This is a slight decrease, less than 1%, or actually 0.74 of 1% from February 22, which was at 57.38%. So we're pretty much in line with last year's expenditures in terms of the budget. And the awarded bids, in your packet, you have 20 items of awarded bids over $20,000 for this previous month. Happy to answer any questions on either of the two reports.
All right, any questions from our board members? I think you're done.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, item 10 on the agenda, Board Outcome 1. We have Dr. Cardenas and Dr. Gilliland to present.
Good afternoon, Board President Evelyn Kasuga, Dr. Elliott, members of the board, guests, and faculty and staff. We are here to present Outcome 1, but before we begin, I would also like to introduce a brand new employee here at Central Arizona College. It's with huge pleasure that I introduce I'm sorry, Dr. Suzanne Crockett. Yes, her name is right on it. Dr. Suzanne Crockett, who also just arrived yesterday and we hope will be with us for a very long time. So she has dug right in and is getting busy, just as our other new employee, and we're just delighted to have them all here. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Cardenas, who's going to roll with our presentation, and then I will pick up a little bit of it at the end.
All right. Good afternoon, President Kasuga, board members, Dr. Elliott, colleagues, students, and guests. Thank you again for being here. I know it's been a long meeting, so I'm going to kind of move through this pretty quickly and then open the floor for questions. So we wanted to start with talking about outcome number 1. So outcome number 1 is with regard to student success. And each of the different components that we'll look at refer to either retention rates or graduation rates. And I did want to mention that the data that we use and the charts that we are using is information so that we have comparable data. So both at the national level and also at the state level. You'll notice that some of the graphs don't have that information input yet, but we do have our own CAC data. So to begin with retention, the other point that I would like to point out, I should have brought this up earlier, is this represents a specific population of our students. So this is not indicative of our entire student population. So for instance, primarily the group that we're looking at is about 35 to 45% of our students for the 21-22 year, which is about 701 students in general that are full-time, that are full-time, first-time degree-seeking students. So knowing that our student population in general, we have many part-time students, we have many students that start in high school, and we know their first time to CAC is not full-time, are not necessarily included in these numbers. So the first, looking at retention, our goal is 77%. The governing board has selected the goal for 77%, and we this year have increased to 73%. So this is our fall-to-fall first-time degree-seeking student retention rate. So you'll notice that it is significantly higher than the national average, and in past years has been higher than, slightly lower than the state average, but we don't have those numbers at this point for this year. And I'm going to go through these rather quickly, and then we'll talk about some of the things that we're kind of doing at this point. The next, I believe, 4 charts that we're going to look at have to do with graduation rate. So the first is looking at the total graduation population rate, again, of our students, about 35 to 45% of our students, which is at 27% this year, which certainly is not where we want to be as a college. And we've really started to look at a couple different things and looking at this differently than we have in the past. So if we go to the next, part of what we have started doing this year is breaking things down a little bit differently so that we can really dive into what is happening with our students from year to year and looking at specific populations of students that are either underrepresented or that we're identifying as not doing as well and not continuing through their program. So we see that we have the high fall-to-fall retention rate, but then the completion rates aren't necessarily in line with that. So this year, we are at 32% for our students with credentials awarded per FTSE, so that's per our full-time student equivalent. If we go on to the next slide, we'll see that we're looking at our minority graduation rates, and this is very specific to the Aspen metrics, which we've talked about with the governing board before, which focuses on very specific populations of students. Within student services, we of course are focused on the measures that Aspen is using, but also really looking at what other underrepresented populations do we have at the college that we can help to provide additional services and remove barriers. So specific to our adult ed population, our prison programs, and things like that as well. The next is our minority credentials awarded per FTSE, which we see is at 18%. We don't have the comparable data. We know that historically, or we know that we've seen over the last couple of years a decline in some of these numbers as we've gone through the pandemic. We also know that one of the big components to keep in mind as we're looking at this is it's a 6-year cohort. So it is a cohort that started several years ago. So as we're implementing new retention and graduation and completion efforts, we don't see the immediate results in the numbers that we're looking at. So we've started to really dive in and develop lead goals rather than the lag goals where, we can see the numbers, but what we're doing today isn't actually going to impact those specific numbers. With our lead goals, we're able to really look at what are we doing today and how is it helping us to predict what will happen in the future. So kind of shifting departmentally how we're focused on that. Let's see, was there one other goal? Is that the last one there? The Pell recipients. So Pell recipients, we do know that we have a large majority of students who are receiving some type of aid, who are receiving Pell in particular. And our financial aid department has started looking at the actual cohort of students that are receiving Pell and working with them as a cohort to start to see improvements with graduation rates and with retention from semester to semester. So again, really looking at what are the individual needs of students opposed to kind of throwing out that large net and seeing how we might be able to provide support. So I wanted to go into just a couple of the recent improvements, and this is the final part of the presentation and share some of the things that are happening as of right now. So with regard to outreach, we finally are very excited to be back into the high schools, back into business and industry in the ways that we were pre-pandemic, and even more so. So we have identified outreach teams that are in each of the different communities and really focused on developing those partnerships. We were very excited to offer or to welcome 100+ students from the Eloy School District that were 8th graders who came out to the college, and it was really exciting to see those large numbers of students. We have a very intentional focus on students and districts that we know their students are underrepresented to help to bring them into the college and provide the support that they need. Improved onboarding services. So lots of things are happening with onboarding when it comes to new registration days, orientation, both being virtual and face-to-face. We actually had a Vaquero Rally Day at Maricopa today. And I know Angela was showing earlier pictures that she had received. We had over 50 students who participated, which might not seem like a huge number, but that is a huge number since we've come back from COVID and being away for so long. So that was very exciting to see the involvement with the students and their families. Advising redesign to focus specifically on students and as they're going into their different career areas, and providing them the information they need, not just a broad scope of information and hoping that they pick out what they need. We're helping to determine what it is that they need. Equity Council has done a tremendous amount of work in identifying target areas for completion, access, retention, and equitable representation, and has been working with departments across the district to help to implement strategies in those areas. So I look forward to hearing more from Equity Council and other groups throughout the district with the work that they are doing as well. Gosh, so many things. I'm not going to mention all of these. Open educational resources, continuing to build and implement 8-week schedules, knowing that we have very specific populations of students that do much better in an 8-week setting. So being able to start a course, even though it may be a little bit more, it is more condensed, and being able to go through that. It doesn't mean that it's for every student, but we do have populations that can be very successful and areas that are very successful with 8-week classes. Modifying our nursing sequence, just making changes that we see that students will need to help them to be successful. The planned improvements, so things that we're really working on, we're excited to finally, after a long time, and there's been a big team that's been working on rolling out the customer relations module, so our REACH CRM, which includes a brand new admissions app, and our outreach team, I know, and so many other people are so excited that we will have a new admissions app, and students for sure. A class search tool, lots of work with not just diversity, equity, and inclusion, but including that the belonging piece, so DEIB, and making sure that not only are students included in all of the different things that we have, but that they feel that sense of belonging and know that they're not just in the room, but they're participating equally and have that sense of belonging. Mary Kay, I think that's it. Did I cover it all? Other than general education classes, I know that we're working a lot more with our guided pathways maps and really focusing on guided pathways changes, as well as culturally responsive teaching and high impact practices. So lots of great things that are happening. And as I was saying earlier, I think the big focus is identifying, we know that many times we think that what students need are maybe at this level. What we're finding that we have so many students who have basic needs that we need to address as an institution. And that's something that's not just specific to CAC, it is in colleges across the country. So we're very excited with the grant. Mary Kay and I have talked a lot about this new Title V grant that will help us in providing additional funding for food pantries and expanding mental health services and transportation and all types of things. So we're very excited and know that our students will benefit from the specific things that we've been working on.
I will just add a few words. I believe Dr. Cardenas really covered everything that we had put together jointly. And I just wanted to comment a couple of things that many of the recent and then also planned improvements that come out of the academic work are things that are kind of ongoing. And we've actually presented to the board recently about a number of these, including the open educational resources. You've heard endlessly about guided pathways. We're not done with guided pathways. We're going to continue working with them, refining them a little bit more. There's always that next step. And then, of course, as Dr. Cardenas mentioned, with the grant, we have a lot of work ahead of us. The 8-week scheduling, the entire nursing redesign for the first 2 years. And we're looking at creating more 8-week to provide prerequisites in a condensed form for the health sciences. So that was a work that was actually started. We did lose a couple of our faculty members in the last couple of years, but we're hoping to pick up that work again and get moving with it. So there's a lot of really good energy that's really been kind of ongoing, and we're just planning to continue that work and refine it. And the one last thing I wanted to say about the presentation in general is that with our new advising model, the student success model, we really do have advisors who are designated for academic areas. And so we're seeing a strengthening of those bonds between faculty, groups, divisions, and the designated student success coaches. And in some cases, their offices even being very close to each other. The goal is always to have that, but it's a little bit, we're backfilling now and trying to place them. But that's creating a whole new set of conversations and energy around programs, and I think really going to help our students move forward for success. And I'm going to conclude what I have to say by commenting that with our new grant and with the Gen Ed redesign and with our DEIB focus and many of the other things we have on the horizon, a library learning center redesign on the horizon over the next year, which is a huge project and we'll talk more about later. But our new academic dean, Dr. Crockett, is going to be taking the lead in many of those things and especially bringing a strong academic voice to the Equity Council. So we're really looking forward to all of that. We have a lot to look forward to as we move forward. So, and I think we can take any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Questions? Comment?
Just, if I may, Madam Chair, just a comment. I think it's very exciting. Great job. I think it's critical to reach out to students at the high schools and those things. You're doing that. A lot of them don't realize that we also have at CSC the certificate programs and the other things that will help them get a job with all the companies that are coming here to Cass Grand, Coolidge, and all the other surrounding cities. So it's really critical. Thank you for all your hard work. That's really, really great report.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your enthusiasm in getting this done. Any other comments from board members? All right, thank you so much for your report today, and we'll look forward to more.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes the formal agenda, and the next, before I adjourn, next meeting is May 16th here at this campus. And with that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for sticking around. Meeting is adjourned.